Hey there, Hexers. This is Function here with another What's the Pick? Alright, this time, just like last, I'm going to be doing another first three picks of a draft pack. And before I get into that, just like last time, I'm also going to mention my giveaway. So, I'm going to be giving away a Portentio of Avon, the Shadow Knife Troubadour. He was the Gen Con promo merc, and they're pretty cool. So, I'm going to be giving them away so long as I hit 300 YouTube subscribers by the time I get into Alpha. And so long as I do, I'll give them away to one random subscriber. So definitely subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I have one more of these as well. I have a second one, and I'm going to try to do something that's maybe a little bit more hands-on and kind of a more fun giveaway that people can participate in, like we did for the Aya creation one. Anyhow, I'm going to be using the draft simulator, which can be found on hexdatamine.com. If you haven't used it yet, it's pretty cool. I suggest you check out their site. It's a really good database, and they also have the draft simulator, which is totally rad. Before I do this real quick, though, I do want to say a disclaimer. There's still, maybe about 100 or so cards that need to be spoiled, and a lot of them are going to be commons. And commons are really what make or break draft. So, this might not be the best reflection of what draft is actually going to look like, but it's still a lot of fun. And speaking of that, if you're kind of new to playing TCGs and you're not really sure how drafting works, I suggest you try it out because it's a whole ton of fun. And if you have any questions, I'll put a link in my description to the video here with kind of my suggestions for draft and advice I have for you. Alright, let's jump in and give this a shot. So I gotta reload again so I'm not cheating. I can't have already seen that pack. Well, that was an easy pick if you got a chance to glimpse there. This one might be pretty easy here too. And let's take a look. So we have Warlock Inquisitor. This is the rare. And his biggest thing he has going for him, well, first off, I'll describe him as he's a 3-cost, 3/1 troop. Kind of vanilla-y, except that he has a socket, major socket, so you can put any gem into it. There's quite a few of them that are really strong for him. There's one that does damage when he comes into play to the opponent. There's also, he does damage equal to his attack and to a creature, and then they do the same back to him, so he's kind of removal. Also, he has, when this troop dies, return it to your hand. If you do, it gets a permanent +2 cost. So he costs more and more each time you play him, but he's always going to be around. This guy is a beast in limited. We kind of got lucky with opening an awesome rare here. So let's look at the rest of the pack first before we get ahead of ourselves, maybe. We got Workerbot Factory, which actually isn't bad. It does kind of suck that it's an uncommon, because it's better in multiples. If you have a bunch of them out, you can start chunking or turning out worker bots fairly quickly. We got Dwarven Turbine, which you would never first pick this. You would want to already be invested into the artifact deck, and then take this kind of late, and you'd be in pretty good shape. Chlorophylla is a really strong ramp card. I've talked about it a bunch of times before, but starting off with a ramp card, probably not what we want to do. It could turn out to be that this format revolves around just playing late game cards and big dumb creatures, and if that's the case, Chlorophylla is actually a really, really strong pick early on. We got Researcher Adept, common. Now we're getting to the commons. Not what we want. Radiant Armor, not what we want. Runs the Litter, like I mentioned before. This is a key card in the Shinhair decks, but the Shinhair decks require quite a few enablers in order to make the Battle Hoppers work, because they're all just 0/1 troops. They don't do anything on their own. So you kind of want to have at least an idea that you're going to be able to pick up the enablers, and I'm not a big fan of picking Runs to the Litter first. With that said, it's kind of a high risk, high reward archetype, so if you don't get into it early, you might not be able to get into it at all. It might be too late by then. Ruby Lance is a kind of heavy red commitment removal card. It's a good card, but not the kind of card we want to be first picking. Sensei the Milky Eye is actually quite a good card. If we were going to be taking a Shinhair, we would be taking this guy as opposed to the Runs to the Litter, just because this guy fits in quite a few decks, not just the kind of mono Shinhair decks. Atrophy, very mediocre removal in my opinion. Buccaneer, this is a card I really like. I'm a big fan of tempo decks, and this is basically the king of tempo decks. He bounces one of your opponent's creatures, or one of your own if you really needed, and establishes your own board state. Counter Magic, another good blue card, but I mean, we already got Warlock Inquisitor, who are we kidding? Adamanthian Scrivener, this is a card you can probably expect to be picking up pretty late. Chargebot, which is actually probably underrated by most people, at least I feel like. He's actually pretty decent. And yeah, as far as vanilla 1-drops go, this guy's got a pretty good ability on him. Mortar Strike, it's kind of unclear how this card works as far as the deal 3 damage to target opposing champion. That's pretty straightforward, but the top 3 cards of their deck, well, what does that mean, dealing damage to the cards on their deck? Does that mean if it's a troop it dies when they play it, or does it mean that it mills them 3? My guess would have been that it milled them 3, but there were a couple of weird posts by some of the Cryptozoic guys a few weeks back saying that it kind of did something different than that, so who knows, we will see soon enough. Alright, so really the only standout card here to me is Warlock Inquisitor. It's pretty much an auto pick, but I still wanted to go through the rest of the pack with you guys. So we are kind of heavily committed into Blood. We have a double Blood card already, but let's look at what else we have. Technical Genius, if we were going to be playing Artifacts, this would definitely be good, but Blood and Artifacts don't necessarily go that well together. We can see that the rare is already missing from the pack. Wonder what they got. Elimination Specialist, another good uncommon for the Artifacts deck. They have 2 in there. So if we're passing these, maybe the person who we're passing to ends up in Artifacts, but they're also going to be passing good Artifact cards, which sometimes is not what you want to be doing. Atrophy, no. Well, it is a Blood card, but it's pretty mediocre. Ruby Lance, no. Radiant Armor, no. What's this? Some overcosted artifact troop that's very blurry. Sapper's Charge is actually pretty good, and we might be looking at taking it. Wild Aura, Researcher Adept, no. Peak, definitely not. Call of the Grave, Bombsmith. Bombsmith is actually pretty decent, and Blood and Ruby do go pretty well together. And Blood Thief. So I might be personally overrating Bombsmith, but having kind of curving out is something I really like doing. If we're playing the Warlock Inquisitor, we probably want to be playing green because he can double up his removal, but there's not really any green cards in here that we necessarily want right now. So I still, on that note especially, I want to really keep Wild open, but I don't want to be taking Wild Aura, although Wild Aura works pretty well with that Warlock Inquisitor, but this is a card you can expect late if you did want it. Back to what I was saying about Bondsmith, is it deals 1 damage to target troop when it comes into play, and that's a pretty good effect actually, because it ends up killing quite a few troops. You'd be surprised at how many 1 defense troops there are. With that said, like I said, I wanted to keep Wild open. Sapper's Charge is also removal, and you know, it's a pretty good card all around. So that's the card we're going to be taking here. In case Blood gets cut, there's not very many good Blood cards here, none that I'd be all that happy taking. Maybe if this was a 2-cost guy I might take him, but no. Call of Grave's not bad either, but it's not what we want. Alrighty, so we were kind of rewarded with that last pick here. Ruby seems open still. Savage Raider's pretty good for us. Arena Brawler's definitely pretty good, but let's look at the rest. So Angelic Ascension, a pretty decent diamond card. It's really powerful in that it's quick action. I think an Angel is a 4/4 flyer, which are always good, and this is definitely a good card. It might actually turn out to be one of the better uncommons in the whole set. I wouldn't be too surprised. Whatever this artifact is, it does something, but it's very blurry still. We have Axebot, or I think that's Axebot. Yeah, and another blurry artifact card. Radiant Armor, Command Tower, one of the enablers for the Shinhair deck, but we are not playing Shinhair right now. Although we could if we were going Blood. We could go Blood Wild, and what do you know, there would be in the colors that I already talked about wanting to be in. Savage Raider, Giant Corpse Fly, Blood Bear, Sapphire Aura, Niblin Hunter Pack, Captain Dragon Guard, Arena Brawler, and Blood Aura. Blood Aura is actually quite good, but so is Giant Corpse Fly. You'd actually be surprised at how good this guy is. He's only a 1/1 flyer for 3, which is kind of weak, especially compared to maybe Thunderbird, which turns into a win con on its own. But if we're kind of doing that slow approach, this might be the card we want. It has a powerful effect in that it's kind of a 2-for-1. Granted, maybe it's more of like a 1 1/3 for 1, because having a 1/1 flyer isn't all that great, but it can get in there for a little pokey damage here and there. Making your opponent discard a card somewhat early in the game can definitely tempo you out. Or not tempo you out, but get you that early card advantage kind of. So I think the pick here would be Command Tower, which is pretty good, especially with that Warlock Inquisitor with either of the 2 gems I was mentioning. Savage Raider, Giant Corpse Fly, or Blood Aura. Blood Aura plus Warlock Inquisitor is pretty nice, but I think we can even pick up a Blood Aura later on if we wanted. That one being kind of the type of card that it is, I wouldn't be too surprised if you kind of are able to pick these up with some of your very last picks of the pack. Although of the auras, Blood Aura is probably one of the better. Sapphire is really good too. If we took Sapphire Aura, we could give Warlock Inquisitor Flight with the Flight gem, but I don't really think that's what we want to be doing. You could even be giving it, when it comes into play, draw a card. I think we're going to still just stick with Blood and see what continues to be open. Neither of these cards make me want to really dive into Ruby so early, but Giant Corpse Flight is pretty good. And here we would have paid off with picking up a cool web crawler. Granted, we'd be in, have kind of stuffed on the 3-drops, but we have plenty of time to change that later in the draft. Decent white card passed. But yeah, those are the first 3 picks. Let me know what you guys thought, what your opinions were on the picks. I think this one was a little easier than that first one I did. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Maybe you would have picked the same ones I did, or you would have gone a completely different route. This Ruby Pyromancer is pretty good too. Like I said earlier, definitely subscribe if you haven't yet. Get a chance to win the Portentio. Until next time, less fail, more function.